You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Joining us now, Republican Congressman, Virginia 9th District, Morgan Griffith. Congressman, great to have you with us, sir.
Good to be with you.
So,
all is well.
It is, sir. Your good friend and mine, Tom Garrett, resigning on Monday. Neither expected that. Neither of us saw that happening, I don't think. I mean, we talked a little bit this weekend over some of the issues. He didn't come up, but I didn't expect that. I know you're a friend of Tom's. You know him very well. Did you have any conversation at all with him, sir?
I have not had any conversation with Tom since he made the decision to not seek re-election. Obviously, I did not know about his issues with alcohol, but I did think a lot of the charges that were being brought up in the press were, as he said, half-truths and outright lies. And so I'm sorry he made the decision, but if that's what's best for his family, then that's what he should do. At this point, we have to move forward.
Well, it was a personal decision he made, and when you look at it on the surface, I don't think it was necessarily made by the hit piece that Politico had on him. I think that came out on Friday, which I thought was, by the way, a despicable piece, unnamed sources, interns, who knows who. And as far as having dogs in the office, the last time I went in one of the buildings, I saw several dogs, so it's not like he's the only person that had a dog in there. So I just thought that was a hit piece that was beyond the pale. But, you know, Congressman, it's the time we live in now. I mean, political enemies now, if people get taken out by these so-called media companies that basically do hit pieces without naming anybody. I mean, it could happen to anybody at any time, and you can't do anything at all about it. Kind of sad, isn't it?
It is certainly a problem on both sides of the aisle. People get these accusations that pop up out of nowhere, or there's a little bit of truth to it, and they make it sound like it's something that's horrible. We're all human beings. We've all, said or done things that we ought not to have done, and we're just trying to do the best we can across the board. And all of a sudden, somebody comes in and blows it up out of proportion, and it puts a lot of stress on members and their families. There's no question about that.
All right, let's get to politics. Let's get to the immigration bill coming up, the so-called Queen of the Hill, where it looks like we could get 4 separate bills. One is going to be just a clean amnesty. We know we have the Judiciary Chairman, Congressman Bob Goodlatte bill. Nobody's seen that. We understand there might be some changes to it. But Republican leadership really on this one, Congressman, between a rock and a hard place, because the last thing they want is 4 separate bills to vote on, and then one of them is just clean amnesty, right? I mean, that's the last thing they want, but you've got enough moderates, it seems, now to be able to get that to the floor. What do you think will happen, sir?
Well, negotiations are underway to try to come up with a bill that's more Republican than not. There are enough moderates to probably force the issue. I, for one, don't like Queen of the Hill. I think that's bad legislating. And so your listeners understand that means that you vote on all 4 bills, but it's not the first one to pass. It's the one that gets the most votes of the 4. Mm-hmm. So 2 or 3 of them might pass, but it's the one that gets the most votes. So if one bill gets 230 and another bill gets 229, you're stuck with 230. I don't like that. I think it's bad policy, and I would anticipate breaking with my leadership and voting against the rule if it was a Queen of the Hill approach.
But if you've got enough moderates to combine with all of the Democrats, I think you need, 18 of them?
They may do that.
Right?
Yes, they may do that in spite of me being opposed to it. Yeah,
then they can pass it anyway, and it's going to get to the floor. But, I mean, the whole objective of the president's approach to immigration reform, and he has said this, he said, I'll grant a form of amnesty to the DACA children, to the Dreamers. I will grant that. And I think there's 800,000, 750,000 applicants. He said he'd go up to 2 million, with the understanding there's probably another 1 million that haven't applied out of fear of going on a list. I get that. So I think the president showed, look, I'm willing to fix the short-term problem. But he said, along with that, I want a long-term legislative reform solution to immigration. That includes border security, building the wall, getting rid of chain migration, going to an economic-based system, getting rid of the visa lottery, things of that nature, so we can fix the problem so this doesn't keep happening. Why isn't that bill going to the floor?
Well,
the Goodlet bill.
Yeah, there are enough moderates who don't like some of the aspects of the Goodlet bill, so they are opposing that. There may be some modifications made. When we left Washington last week, various parties were discussing it, meetings were being held, and I can tell you that things looked good. Now, things can look good one day and dark the next. So I can't tell you what's happening today, but when I left, the moderates were negotiating with the conservatives and trying to come up with the 4 pillars that the president says he will sign and that he wants. It still won't go and do everything. It won't fix everything. There's a lot of problems in our immigration system. We make it too hard for people who have skills and talents that we want to come here from wherever in the world. On the one hand, on the other hand, we've got a porous border system and a system where people are allowed to come into this country on a work visa, a student visa, or even a travel visa, and nobody ever checks up to see whether they left when they were supposed to. So there's a lot of reform that we need to do that will not be taken up this summer, unfortunately. But if we can get an end to the chain immigration system, if we can get rid of the lottery, if we can put some real significant money in advance on securing our southern border, then those are valuable steps. And everybody wants to see us do something with the DACA children that makes sense, because I'm sure there are some who came here full well knowing that they were breaking the law. A few who were maybe 16, 17 at the time. But the vast majority of them came as small children. They had no idea. They were just with their parents. And,
And
we want to see those folks taken care of, but we've got to make sure we fix the system and don't just take care of that and then never do anything on the southern border or on the rest of these problems.
I think everyone would admit that the immigration system as we have today is not working. So we've got to reform it. Hopefully moderates and conservatives and immigration, the hawks like me, maybe they can get a compromise that everybody can live with. I'm all about compromising because something is better than what we have now. And I understand you're going to have to be some give and take. And I think the president led with that. He said, I campaigned on no amnesty for dreamers, but I'm willing to give up amnesty to 2 million with a pathway to citizenship if we can solve the problem on a long-term basis. And that got soundly rejected by Chuck, Nancy, and the others. One thing about the Democrats, Congressman, you have to admit they stick together. I mean, it's unbelievable. The Republicans fracture all the time. The Democrats in both chambers, how do they manage to stick together to such an extent? How do they manage that?
It's interesting because I think it's actually good that we don't stick together. I say that, it's hard to get things done, but the Democrats put their political party above their philosophy and what they think is right for the country. And so they always come back to following in on what the party wants to do, with a few rare exceptions. Republicans don't do that. We believe, many of us, both on the right and the left in our party, both the moderates and the conservatives in our party, if we strongly believe in something, we're going to go out there and fight for it. And as opposed to just kowtowing to our leaders. They kowtow to Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. We just don't do that. Boehner never had that. Ryan doesn't have that. The speakers that were there before that didn't really have that. And I think in the long run, it's healthier to have this debate of ideas. Now, we're trying to come together by working out a compromise within the Republican conference. And Leader McCarthy and Speaker Ryan are working very hard to try to make that happen. I know Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan of the Freedom Caucus are working in that direction without sacrificing the principles that we hold on these issues. And I believe that the moderates are likewise trying to negotiate in good faith to get a Republican compromise worked out, and then we can all come together without sacrificing, all of our principles to kowtow or bow down to one leader on one side or the other.
Congressman, the president sent up a $15 billion rescission package, a clawback, saying, you know what, here, I'm looking through this budget. There's fat here, there's garbage here, there's this here. Let's just get this $15 billion out. A lot of the money not even being spent, sitting in accounts that are not being activated. It's not like this is coming out of school children's lunch boxes, right? This is just money sitting around. But yet, even with a majority, you don't even have the votes in Congress to get rid of $15 billion that isn't even being spent. I mean, what is the deal?
Yeah, I can't explain that. I can tell you that, that some people just think it's hard to explain. I don't. Because the Democrats immediately attacked and said you're cutting money out of the child's health insurance program.
Fake news.
No, we're taking money that hasn't been spent. We're leaving a reserve that's as large as any time that we've needed a reserve for that account. And we just finished authorizing and taking care of CHIP for the next 10 years. And interestingly, many of the Democrats voted against that reauthorization because they didn't like the way we were spending for it. And what a rescission package does, in this case, it takes money off the table that hasn't been spent. And the reason the Democrats are opposed to it is they want to use that as what's called a pay-for later. So even though we just passed this giant omnibus, some of the Democrats want to go back in, claim, oh, well, here's some money over here that we haven't spent, so we can now spend it on something else. So we're spending more money than we've ever spent before, and they still want to spend. And unfortunately, some of the Republicans are either afraid politically that they can't explain it, or they're afraid that they want to spend it too. In some cases, some of the moderates. I don't think that's true of most people, but that's what you're facing, and that's the reason that we're having difficulty getting the vote, because this rescission package makes all kinds of sense.
Well, it does, because if I can just explain it, and I'm going to do it in 20 seconds. This is $15 billion that the White House Budget Office, when they got the budget back, identified as money that is sitting in accounts that haven't been spent, money sitting in loan packages that haven't been loaned out. Like there's $400 million in a railroad expansion loan fund. It's been sitting there since 1986. I mean, there is no railroad expansion. That is not going to happen. It just sits there. The money just sits there in an account. And what the budget office is saying is, let's shut all this down, get this money back. It's not going to cause any difference, but let's get it back into the coffers and get it out of there. And Republicans and Democrats say no. Crazy. All right, let's get to Trey Gowdy now. I know he's retiring, Congressman, and all that, but he gets on TV and he's now defending Spygate in the Trump campaign, saying that the American people would have wanted these informants in there, yet the informants went in based on a dossier, based on getting collusion on Trump. Now they're backing away, saying, well, they're not spies, they were informants, but they were after these other people, but maybe it was collusion. I mean, don't you think this has got to be investigated? What the hell went down?
Absolutely. Look, if this was not an intrusion by the American bureaucrats into a political campaign, then tell us who or how many of these folks were in the Clinton camp. Because if you're looking for Russians trying to interfere, you should have people in both camps if you think that's so important. Nobody has said one word about there being a Clinton spy, somebody who was assigned to keep an eye on their people, who maybe passed on information and set things up. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on. I don't know all the facts. I want to know all the facts. As an elected representative in the United States Congress, I think we're all, as the American people are, entitled to the facts, and we're not going to get the facts out of the organization that did wrong in this case. There's an appearance of impropriety. That means you need to bring somebody in who has no connection with the current folks. And when I say current folks, I'm talking about the folks who are career people at the FBI, career people at the Justice Department. We need to have somebody from the outside come in and take a look at it, and I agree that we need a special counsel probably to take a look at this, unless we can be assured that there's going to be a look by an outside individual who's only concerned about getting the facts. And I'm not sure we can get that assurance from the Justice Department at this point.
Once again, Congressman Morgan Griffith getting right to the heart of the matter. Spot on. Congressman, always appreciate you coming on. Love your candor, and thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.